Healing isn't just a personal journey, it's actually a relational one. And yet, in a world that teaches us to hustle through pain and perform through trauma and to smile through like sorrow, the idea of emotional safety can feel almost foreign because how can you heal if you're still hiding? How can you grow if you're still performing? This is where we begin our episode today because emotional safety isn't soft. It's not some indulgence privilege that's reserved for people with extra time and support systems. It's it's the soil, the prerequisite, the unspoken yes beneath every true act of vulnerability. And most people don't resist healing because they don't want it per se. They resist it because they've never felt safe. They've never felt safe enough to trust that healing won't cost them even more. They've learned that honesty gets punished, right? And that softness gets exploited and that needs become more like burdens. And so they learn to armor up and to filter, to disappear behind a version of themselves that's easier to digest. But you can't become whole while you're splitting yourself into pieces just to be palatable. So let me name this clearly. You can't heal if you have to hide. And hiding isn't always a conscious act though. Sometimes it's that pause before you speak, wondering if this part will be too much. Sometimes it's the way your shoulders shrink when someone asks how you're doing. Sometimes it's the way that you edit yourself mid-sentence, trying to sound less needy or less intense or less real. And we were taught early that being fully ourselves is often risky. And for many, especially men, especially those who have been shamed for emotional expression, the message lands hard. To be vulnerable is to be weak. To be soft is to be suspect. To ask for help is to admit failure. And so we build our lives behind these locked doors. We become performers in our own stories. We smile, and yet we're silent on the inside because of that performance underneath, that pain that still remains, because there's no amount of doing better that can replace the need to be known, to be held without judgment, to be listened without being fixed, to be allowed to be a mess without being abandoned. That is what emotional safety could look like, I think. And it's not created by accident. It's built intentionally through presence and patience and the courageous act of being with someone, not just near them per se. See, most people don't know what emotional safety feels like until they finally experience it. It might be a friend, for example, who doesn't flinch when you cry, or a therapist who doesn't rush to explain you, or maybe a partner who doesn't punish you for saying, "I'm not okay." And suddenly something shifts. Because in that moment, your body learns that it doesn't have to brace for rejection. Your nervous system relaxes and your heart opens up just a bit more. And that opening is where the healing begins. And when we don't have that safety, well, the healing stalls then, right? And progress plateaus. Because it's not because we're failing, it's because our inner world is still in survival mode. I mean, think about it. If you're constantly scanning for threats, you can't be present, can you? If you're always rehearsing your words, like before you actually speak, you can't be honest and if you're afraid your truth will be too heavy for someone else to carry, well, you'll keep carrying it alone then. And healing alone, that's not healing, that's surviving. There's a reason so many people feel stuck in their growth. And it's not because of laziness. It's not resistance. It's protection. They're protecting the parts of themselves that have been wounded in past attempts to be real. They're remembering the moment that their vulnerability was mocked, the time that they told the truth and got ghosted, the time they asked for support and were told that they were too much. And that memory lives in the body. And so we shrink and we smile instead of speaking. We apologize for needing anything. And we talk in circles so we don't say too much. It's not because we want to be vague, but it's because we've learned that clarity can be dangerous. And this is why emotional safety is so radical. It interrupts that cycle. It says, you don't have to hide here. You're safe. And when that happens, when someone believes that for the first time that they're safe, the shift is often immediate. Not always loud, right? And it's not always dramatic, but it's real. The jaw begins to relax, right? The eyes soften, the breath gets deeper. And in that breath, in that softness, healing can begin. But we don't just need emotional safety from others, right? We also need it from ourselves, because sometimes the most unsafe place is actually inside our own head and our thoughts. We become our own judge and jailer. We berate ourselves for feeling too much, and we shame ourselves for not getting over it faster. We tell ourselves that we should be stronger and we should be further along and less affected. But healing doesn't come from criticizing. Healing comes from compassion. And the moment we learn to sit with ourselves instead of scolding ourselves, to ask what it is that hurts inside instead of why we're still hurting, to hold ourselves in kindness instead of rushing to improve, that's when the moment is when we start creating inner safety. And inner safety is the foundation of all our transformation. Because no matter how good the relationship is, no matter how good the therapist is, or even the community that you're in, if we're still hiding from ourselves, if we still believe that our pain makes us unlovable, then healing will always feel out of reach. Because it's not because healing is impossible, it's because it's been waiting for permission to feel, permission to slow down, permission to bring your whole self into the room. So let's talk about what emotional safety actually looks like. Not just in theory, but in practice as well too. Because emotional safety, it isn't a feeling that just happens. It's something that gets built moment by moment, choice by choice, one breath at a time. In a relationship, emotional safety looks like listening without interrupting. It looks like someone staying present with you while you say something that is difficult or hard or vulnerable. It looks like not using someone's vulnerability against them later. It's the quiet assurance that you are safe to be real in this place, and I will leave when it gets messy. It doesn't mean that they'll always understand you, but it also doesn't mean that they'll always agree with you, but it does mean that they won't shame you, or they won't punish you, or abandon you for being honest. And that kind of safety, it's sacred. It's a rare kind. Because let's be honest, most of us, We were taught how to perform, how to be, how to be on point instead of being present. We were trained to say the right thing, not necessarily the true thing. We were raised in this culture where strength meant silence, right? Where connection meant compliance, and where conflict meant danger. And so now, even when we want to be open, our bodies still instinctively tense up. We instinctively scan for danger, and we brace for rejection, because our nervous system, it's still carrying the memories of every time vulnerability did not go well. And that's why safety isn't just about what's said, it's also about what is felt. You can say, you're safe here, but if your tone is impatient, and if your face looks annoyed, if your posture is guarded, the body hears a different message. And the body doesn't lie. So emotional safety isn't just about kindness, it's also about coherence. It's where your words, energy, and behavior all align and say, I'm not here to fix you, I'm here to be with you. And that presence, that being with, that's the most healing force, I believe, that we experience in this world. Because when someone sits with you in your pain without trying to rush it or spin it or solve it, your body starts to unlearn the fear that it's been holding for years. It's like the first deep breath after being underwater for too long. That moment of, oh, I can just be here. I don't have to fight. I don't have to flee. I don't have to shrink to be safe, right? That's what we're longing for. That's what we need. And yet, many of us have never experienced this consistently. And so, in the absence of it, we learn to fake it, to smile, to nod, and to act okay, even when we're unraveling on the inside. Because the truth is, pretending is often safer than being punished for being real. But the cost of pretending is so steep. We lose connection, and we lose ourselves. And over time, we start to believe that this is all there is, that real connection does not exist, that we're too much, and that healing is for other people. But healing isn't for other people. It's actually for you. It's for all of us. And the way back isn't through more performance. It's through being present. And so, what does it take to create emotional safety? It takes slowness. It takes softness. It takes noticing what someone is saying with their words and what their body is saying underneath. It takes asking, are you okay to keep talking about this? It takes saying, you don't have to go there if you're not ready, right? It takes honoring the boundary and not pushing past it. And here's something important. Emotional safety isn't just about comfort, it's about capacity. When people feel safe, they can go deeper. They can touch the hard stuff. They can name what's really going on. But without safety, even the easiest conversations feel threatening, because we're not just managing the moments that we're in. We're managing our own survival. And that's why so many people say, I just can't talk about it. It's not because they're being dramatic. It's because their body it still remembers what happened the last time that they tried. And this is especially true in communities where vulnerability was never modeled, right? Where men were, for example, taught that tears were weakness, right? And that feelings were feminine. And that anger was acceptable, but sadness was not. So what do you do when your grief has no home? When your fear has no outlet? When your longing for connection gets twisted into shame? Well, you learn to hide, and you learn to numb, and you learn to pretend. And sometimes pretending, it gets so convincing. I mean, you even start to believe it. You start to believe that you're fine, right? And that you don't need help. And that it's better not to even open up anyway. But beneath the surface, the cost begins to add up. And it shows up in anxiety that you can't explain. It shows up in relationships that feel distant. It shows up in moments where someone reaches out and you don't know how to let them in because healing isn't just about dealing with the pain, is it? It's about learning how to be safe again. And that's no small task because safety is felt. Safety is remembered. It's built, not once, but over and over again through every moment of honest and grounded, respectful connection. It's what allows us to stop performing and to stop bracing. It's what allows us to show up as we are without any apology. And for many people, that's the scariest and most liberating thing that they could ever do. Because what if being fully seen doesn't just lead to rejection? What if your truth doesn't actually ruin the moment? What if your tears don't push people away, but actually it draws them closer? What if the thing you've been hiding is the very thing that leads you finally to feel held? That's the power of emotional safety. But let's maybe explore what creating that safety looks like, not just for others, but within our own selves. Let's talk about what it means to create that emotional safety in this home base here. Because while it's true that healing happens in relationships, it's also true that the relationship that you have with yourself actually shapes everything else around you, right? So many of us are incredibly kind to others while simultaneously being cruel to ourselves. We comfort our friends and offer them grace and tell them to take their time, right? And then we turn around and we shame ourselves for not being healed yet. And we say things in our own minds that we would never say to another human being. And we thus punish ourselves for feeling sad. And we belittle ourselves for struggling. And we rush ourselves through pain like it's an inconvenience rather than a wound that needs tending to. But healing doesn't grow in a hostile environment, does it? I mean, if your inner world feels like this battlefield, your healing will stall. Not because you're broken, but because you're defending yourself from yourself. So how do we change that? We start by practicing an inner safety. And that begins first with listening. Not fixing, not judging, just listening. When an emotion rises up, what if you just notice it? What if instead of asking, how do I get rid of this, you asked, what is this trying to tell me in this moment? What if instead of saying, oh, I shouldn't feel this way, you instead said, of course I feel this way, given what I've been through in the past, right? That shift from resistance to compassion is the core of internal emotional safety. It's the moment that you stop treating your emotions like enemies that you have to conquer. And instead you start honoring them as messages from within. Think about the child version that you once were. if that child came to you afraid or crying or even overwhelmed, would you yell at them to get it together? Would you say, this again? You're still feeling this? Of course not. You'd kneel, right? You'd soften. You'd make space for their fear and their confusion and their sadness, because you'd understand that their need isn't weakness, it's human. That's the posture that we must learn to extend to ourselves again and again, because until we do, we keep seeking safety from others while sabotaging it from within. And that's a brutal cycle. I mean, you might finally find someone safe, but if your internal voice is still harsh and is still punishing and is still impatient, you won't be able to fully receive safety that's being offered. You'll distrust it, right? You'll push it away. And you'll tell yourself that it's not real, it's not lasting, it's not safe. Because your default wiring says safety does not exist. Hiding is the only way to stay okay. But that wiring, it can change. Not overnight and not without effort, but it can change. And it starts by noticing, right? Noticing those moments when you want to retreat into the hiding. Noticing the habits that helped you to survive once upon a time, but that are no longer serving you. Noticing the small cues from your body that say, this isn't safe, and asking if that's still true. Because sometimes the danger is real, but sometimes it's remembered. And healing, it means learning to discern the difference. Creating emotional safety internally, it also means creating boundaries. And boundaries aren't just about keeping others out. They're about protecting your own capacity, your own peace, your own nervous system, right? And if you're constantly putting yourself in environments that drain you, in relationships, for example, that shame you, right? Or in conversations that erase your voice, you're reinforcing that idea that safety is a luxury that you do not deserve. But you do deserve it, don't you? And sometimes the most loving thing that you can do for yourself, it's to say, no, not today, not this way. Boundaries aren't rejection, they're respect. They say, I want to stay connected to myself and to you, to this moment, but I can't do that if I'm constantly abandoning my own sense of safety just to make others comfortable. That kind of clarity, that kind of groundedness, it's how we start rebuilding trust with ourselves. And trust is the gateway to healing, right? Because you can't be vulnerable if you're waiting for the next betrayal. You can't let go if you don't trust that someone or something will hold you. So we start small, right? We build trust through small moments of honesty. By checking in with ourselves, right? By asking, what do I need right now in this moment? By actually listening to the answer and honoring it. Maybe what you need is a walk. Maybe it's a journal entry. Maybe it's just silence. Maybe it's reaching out to a friend who knows how to listen without fixing. Whatever it is, honoring that need is an important act of healing. It tells your nervous system, I'm paying attention now and I'm not abandoning you anymore. And that's how we create a home inside ourselves. One that doesn't require hiding. One that doesn't punish the pain. One that one that doesn't demand a sense of perfection before offering compassion. That home becomes your foundation. And from that place, everything shifts, right? You begin to show up differently. And you start recognizing who is safe and who isn't. And you stop over-explaining and over-performing and over-apologizing. And you begin to believe that you are worthy of love as you are, and not necessarily after you've fixed yourself, because the truth is that healing isn't about becoming someone new. No, healing, it's more about returning to the person you were before you had to hide. And emotional safety, both internal and external, is the bridge. It's this bridge back to that self. It's what allows you to lower your guard and to unlearn the shame and to be real without flinching. And once you've tasted that kind of safety, you'll never mistake performance for connection again. But let's talk a little bit about what it looks like to offer this emotional safety to others around you, and how becoming a person, like a safe person for someone else, can transform not only you but both of you in that connection. See, so far we've talked about what emotional safety feels like and what it costs us when it's missing, and how to begin cultivating it inside ourselves. But now we do need to talk about this next aspect, which is just as important, and that's becoming a safe space for others. Because emotional safety is never just personal. It's actually relational. It's communal. It's something that we create for each other, moment by moment, word by word, silence by silence. And the truth is, most people have never truly felt safe in their relationship. They've been heard maybe, but they've never really been listened to. They've been tolerated, but they haven't been welcomed. They've been loved conditionally so long as they stayed small and agreeable and inconvenience. So imagine what happens, right? When someone finally encounters a person who holds space without pressure, who doesn't try to fix or change them, who meets their messy with warmth, not judgment. It's disorienting, and it's healing. It's unforgettable, and you can be that person, not perfectly, and not without mistakes, but intentionally, yes. So let's break down what it means to offer emotional safety to someone else, shall we? Firstly, it's not performing. You don't have to say the right thing. You have to be present in that moment. See, most of the time, people aren't looking for the answers. Most of the time, they're just looking for attunement. Can you, for example, sit with me in the midst of this? Can you feel what I'm feeling without trying to shut it down? Or can you be here without needing to be the hero? Being present says, I'm not going anywhere, and you don't have to be anyone but yourself, right? Secondly, curiosity over assumptions that we make. When someone shares something that's vulnerable or tender, ask before interpreting. Say, can you tell me more about what that was like for you? Instead of, oh, I know how that feels, right? That sounds dismissive, because if you've been through something that is similar, this moment is about their experience, right? Curiosity builds more trust. Assumptions build more distance. And then thirdly, exercise compassion over critique. There will be moments when someone's pain brings up discomfort in you, perhaps. Maybe their grief feels too big, right? Maybe their story challenges something in your worldview. But offering emotional safety means choosing to stay rooted in compassion, even when it's difficult or hard. And that might sound like this: I don't fully understand yet, but I want to, and I'm here. Compassion doesn't mean you're agreeing. It just means you're committed. Committed to being kind, even in the complexity that you're sharing with them. Fourthly, consent in emotional spaces is so critical. This one gets overlooked constantly. Just because someone opens up doesn't mean that they're inviting a deep dive or unsolicited advice. So check in and ask, do you want to talk more about this? Or would it be okay if I offered a reflection? Or do you just want me to be here with you right now? That level of emotional consent, it creates trust because it signals I respect your boundaries and I don't assume access just because we're close. And trust, like I said, is the oxygen of intimacy, right? And fifthly, accountability for rupture. So even in the safest spaces, sometimes there will be moments of rupture. Moments when we say the wrong thing, right? When our tone doesn't quite match our intent. When our silence hurts more than we realized it did. But here's the difference between unsafe spaces and healing spaces. In healing spaces, the rupture is followed by repair. You own it, right? You name the harm and you stay in the conversation instead of fleeing from it. And emotional safety isn't about never messing up. It's about being willing to make it right. Because when someone sees that they can be honest and still be held, even after tension or miscommunication, their nervous system is learning. It's learning that I can be real and still stay connected. And that's the alchemy of safety. That's where trust grows. Deep roots, right? And here's something else that's worth saying. Creating emotional safety, it does not mean that you become someone's therapist, right? It doesn't mean that you're carrying their pain alone. And it doesn't mean that you abandon your own needs to make them comfortable. In fact, true emotional safety includes mutuality. You matter in that space as well, too. And that means you're speaking your truth gently. That means you're honoring your own limits with grace. And that means you're creating relationships where both people feel seen or safe or supported. Anything else is not safety, it's sacrifice. And long term, that kind of imbalance only creates resentment and burnout. But when safety is mutual, the healing multiplies. And people start telling the truth. And as a result, walls start coming down and relationships deepen because safety, it gives permission for vulnerability. And vulnerability, that's the doorway to intimacy. Every time that you show someone that they don't have to hide, that they can be fully human in your presence, you're doing something rare and needed. You're interrupting the legacy of silence, and you're unlearning generations of emotional exile. You're building a world where honesty is not punished, but it's cherished. And maybe, perhaps you're also giving someone the first real taste of what it feels like to be safe. And that's no small thing. That's not soft. That's not sentimental. That's revolutionary. Because once someone knows what safety feels like, they'll never again confuse connection with performance. They'll They'll stop settling for relationships where they're only welcome in pieces, right? And they'll begin to ask, does this space honor all of me? And from there, healing becomes not just possible, but inevitable. So here's my invitation to you. Be that space. Create that safety. Offer it first to yourself, and then to those who are ready to meet you in it. Because you can't heal if you have to hide. But you can grow and transform and come alive again when the hiding is no longer necessary. When being real is no longer dangerous. And when love finally feels like it's safe. You got this.